Begin the card Daf, Mesech Nazir Daf Dalad. We begin on the bottom of Gimel Mabeis, 3 lines up in the bottom of the Amud, where the Gemara continues to explain the halacha of our previous Mishnah. We started the second Mishnah in this Mesechta, in this parak, that discusses when you take a partial type of Naziris. So in the first Mishnah, we spoke about partial, let's say, with Yadayim. Here in this Mishnah, we spoke about partial, like when you only take one of the elements of Naziris for your Naziris. What's the halacha? So the Gemara quoted that it's a machlekes Rabbi Shimon and the Rabbanan regarding if you have to take all of them or it's enough even one of them. And the Gemara continues explaining their sources and what they do with the other ones, pasuk, for their opinion. Some of the discussions in today's daf are, like we said, let's say you take only one feature of a Nazir, are you going to become a Nazir or not? The next mission discusses the distinction between a Nazir Olam and Nazir Shimshon. Shimshon Hagibur was a Nazir for his whole life. So what's the difference between that and taking a Nazir Olam or becoming a Nazir forever? The Gemara brings a machlekes whether a person can even take on a Nazir Shimshon. Could you even make yourself as such a Nazir? And that relates also to Harei like Kibachor. Let's say someone takes a neder associated with the Bechor. Is that also going to be a Kabbalah of a neder? Because is Bechor considered something that's a Dava HaNader, or it's not Dava HaNader, which that relates to the concept of Hatfasa. Hatfasa is when I'm transferring sanctity, I'm going to say, let's say this loaf of bread should be on me like a carbon, which that's your classic neder. But it has to be B'Dava HaNader. It has to be something that it itself became forbidden through a neder, which is what a carbon is. It can't be a Dava Aser. You can't transfer something that's intrinsically Aser to be a Hatfasa. So begin the current Daf Gimel Beis, 3 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. We had mentioned the Mishnah, Harini Nazir and Chatzanim. I'm taking a Nazir from, let's say, just grape seeds, which is only one feature of a Nazir. According to the Chacham, which is the halacha of the Mishnah, they said, yeah, I feel like Nazir al-Bechad, but no, you have a Nazir. Even if they only one, they're going to be Nazir. But Shimon says, no. In the Chavached Mekulam, you can't become a Nazir until you take from all of them, or, like Tais explained, Bistama. You just say the generic Nazir, and that will be from everything. Now, the Gemara brought their sources of this halacha, which is, Reb Shimon learns it out from Mikol. That your Kabbalah has to be from everything, from all of them. The Rabbanan learn now from the pasuk of no miyayin v'sheicha yazer, from that words where it says that unnecessarily, what is it saying yayin v'sheicha yazer? To say that anything that you pick is going to be in the ziras, even though it's not from everything. Okay, good. Now each one explained their opinion. Now our Gemara continues and says, what does each one do with the other one's pasuk to explain their opinion? Says the Gemara of Shimon Ami. Him also haksiv, but the pasuk says miyayin v'sheicha yazer, which we said that sounds like even if the nazir is only from one of them, what does he do with that pasuk? He says it has to be from them all. Says the Gemara, hahumi boile. He needs it to teach something else. What does that come to teach? That's coming to teach lesser yayin mitzvah ki yayin harishos, to make even mitzvah wine forbidden when you take in naziris, like permitted wine. So it's not teaching you this concept that Rabban say, oh, it's extra, and they're just telling you even if you just pick yayin or sheikh or whatever, that's going to make you into nazir. No. It has to be mikol. You have to take on from everything. This pasuk is taking here some other chiddush. Tell you even the yayin shel mitzvah is aser. Says Gemara, wait a second, mahi. What is a yayin shel mitzvah? So it sounds like kedusha v'avdalta, making kiddush, making avdallah. That even that, when you take in naziris, is going to become aser. Says the Gemara as a of avdallah and aleph. How could that be? Had a mushba v'oimer love mahar Sinai. He's already has taken the previous oath and obligating Kiddush Abdallah from Har Sinai, because Kiddush on Shabbos is Dairaisa. So how could you tell me that the pasuk is telling me that Miyayin v'Sheichel Yazir, that the Nazir is going to take effect on Kiddush and Abdallah? Yayin shal mitzvah kiyayin rishus. How's that possible? You already have a pre-existing shvur before this ned of Naziris that already doesn't let you take Naziris, which you already saw by Har Sinai that you're going to make Kiddush and Abdallah. So how could that be what the pasuk is coming to tell me? That's how you would normally read the Gemara. But Tais says this is difficult. Because Tais says to the contrary. What do you mean this should be bothering anyone who's reading this Gemara? That's why you need the extra pasuk. Of course, I wouldn't need a pasuk to tell me. I need a pasuk to tell me that Nazir should take effect. And additionally, Tais asks, he says, what does the Gemara answer? As we're going to see right now. Oh, you're right. That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about where the guy swore to drink wine, and then he goes and takes a neder of Naziris, that the Naziris now takes effect on his shvuah. What do you mean? Then you have the same question. He's mushba v'oimid mahar Sinai. In other words, there's no greater mushba v'oimid than if you swore to drink. So how would that answer the question then? Oh, that's the case of the yain shel mitzvah because you swore to do it, and then you took an edom nazir. How would that take effect? Additionally, Taisa asks the third question. He says, hello, it's not what you're thinking. Kiddush on Shabbos is not deraisa. Because although it says zachar, which the Gemara darshans, that in the Gemara Pesachim, zachrei al yayin, that's an asmachta b'alma. It's a rabbinic halacha. So what are you telling me that's mush b'vayim l'mahabrisina to make Kiddush? So Taisus brings from Rabbi Tam that actually the gears in the Gemara is what's called bitmiya. Not harim mush b'vayim l'mahabrisina. It's pink fakert, how you normally read the Gemara. You think he's already sworn on this from Harasina? In other words, why do you need an extra pasuk to tell me? And that's what the Shimon is using the pasuk for. Extra pasuk, not like the Chacham. He's using it to say it's Asur Yain Shel Mitzvah. What? You think he's mush b'vayim l'mahabrisina? Because although Kiddush on Shabbos is deraisa, but on wine it's not deraisa, because achrei al yain is only asmachta. Wow, it's a punkt fakert of a question. Now the Gemara is answering, says the Gemara, el kihadam Rava. Rather, it's like what Rava said. Shvua she'eshta. The guy swears that he's going to drink, v'chaz v'amar in nazir, and then he goes and says, I'm going to be a nazir. As in Nazir is chayla shvua. That's why you need an extra pasuk to say, you just swore you're going to drink. You're already pre-existing. You can't make an Adam Nazir. No, the pasuk tells me that it's going to take effect. The Shmak, according to Rabbi Tam, punkt fakert how we would read our Gemara, now it makes sense to answer all the questions of Taisus. Okay, that's what Shimon does with the pasuk. Then the Gemara asks, but Rabbanan Nami, what do they do? Similarly, they need the pasuk yain b'sheich yazer to teach you what we just said Reb Shimon uses it for. Less a yain mitzvah kiyan yoshos to say even the yain shel mitzvah, which we just explained what that means. The guy swore he's going to drink, and then he takes an end. That's the pasuk coming to teach you. So how could they tell me from there you learn out that even if you take from one thing you'll be a nazir? Says the Gemara, yes, good point. They need the pasuk to teach us halacha, but if that was the case, Lemakor let the pasuk just say an extra word miyayin. My v'sheicha nachavard. Oh, Shabbat and Natarti. Learn out both things from there. We learn out that, yes, to Asur Yain Shal Mitzvah Yain Nechashos, and we also learn out that even if you take Naziras from just one thing, like let's say Sheikha, will make you into a Nazir. Okay. But then says the Gemara, Reb Shimon, what does he do with this? You just told me, and this is how we love those Gemaras go back and forth like a ping pong, because we're saying, okay, what does he do? What does he do? What does he do? It's like, where do we get to this resolution? So Reb Shimon, he says, no. Because all he's doing is he's showing you from the word yayin. Chacham just pointed out we have extra word sheikha. So Shimon says, I'll tell you what you learn from a sheikha. Not to tell you even if you take in the naziris from one thing. That's alufi sheikha lemikdash. That's coming to learn out from over here to the halachas of the mikdash, that you would not be chayav for entering the mikdash only if you partake from yayin. Because we're coming to exclude from that of Rabbi Yehuda. In other words, the Chsivit says the pasuk in Meyikra Yain v'Sheich al Teish. The Khan were warned: wine and hard old wine al Teish don't drink. Atu v'necha itach, you and your sons with you. Now, ma gabe Nazir, just like by Nazir, and it says the word Yain v'Sheicher. Yain v'Delitzah, what's forbidden is only wine. Avashar mashkin loy, but other intoxicating beverages are not forbidden for a Nazir to drink. V'gabe Mikdash nami, we needed to teach you Gzeir Shavah to the base of Mikdash. Yain or delitzah is only wine that's forbidden. Avashar mashkin mashtakar and loy, but other intoxicating beverages are not forbidden to enter into the base of Mikdash. Ulafukim in the Rabbi Yehuda, and we needed to tell you this takes good for Rabbi Yehuda because they're learning the brayser. Yehuda says, "Achal devei lekilas." If you eat these dried figs from keilas, which are very intoxicating, v'shasa dvash v'chalav v'nichs Mikdash, or you drank honey and milk, which also could make you a little bit loopy, and you're going to the base of Mikdash, chayiv g'ni chayiv. Because the idea is you can't do that vaida in an intoxicated manner. Oh, so okay. So Rabbi Yehuda holds like that. That's what we needed to tell you from Sheikha to teach you that no, it's only yayin and not any intoxicating element. That's one approach to explain what you learn from Sheikha. Now, Ibay Sema says the Gemara, if you want, you could say, not like Rava. Meaning, our original question was asked, we wanted to know that what does Reb Shimon do with the words in the pasuk yayin b'Sheikha yazim? So the first approach the Gemara says was, we said, less a yayin yimitzah ki yayin rishos. So we had asked, we says, wait a second, Hari Mushba Velamasina, however he explained the Gemara's question that we explained today. So Rava said, oh no, the case number where he swears he's going to drink, and then he says he's going to be a Nazir. And that's what the pasuk is coming to tell you, that it's going to take effect. Says the Gemara, no, if you want, you could say a different approach. Reb Shimon Lesle Issa Chalalissa. Reb Shimon generally doesn't hold that when you have a pre-existing isser, that another isser could take effect. The tiny like in the brisa. What's this Reb Shimon? Reb Shimon says, if someone eats a not properly slaughtered animal on Yom Kippurim, he's potter from eating on Yom Kippurim because he already has the pre-existing isser of being in Avela. Oh, so Taisa explains. If you recall, the way Taisa explained the question was really, why do you need a pasuk for? Obvious that what the halacha is going to be. So he said, no, you needed punkt verkehrt, that's to tell you that even though you swore that that's what Rav had said, that still Nazir is going to take effect. So now the Gemara is explaining, if you didn't have a pasuk, I would have thought to say that where a guy swore that he's not going to drink, and then he took a ned, not that he swore that he's going to drink. The first Rav had said, at the case of where he swears he's going to drink, and then you're saying, taking a ned of Naziris, but you already swore you're going to drink, that's what the pasuk would teach you. No, let's say it's where you swore you're not going to drink. That's what the Iboy Seim is saying. And then you take a ned of Naziris, so you would think you wouldn't be chayav on Naziris, because Reb Shimon generally holds in the Lissa. So you already can't drink because of your oath. Kamash on the extra pasuk of a yain b'shecher, that if a guy swore he's not going to drink this cup, and then he takes some of the Naziris, and he goes and he drinks that cup, that he gets lashes twice, for the shvur and for the Naziris. In other words, and don't say like Rabbi said before that the shvur is that I'm going to drink. No, you could even explain even he says, I swear that I'm not going to drink. Because because you would have thought ein nesach lissa, kamash malan the pasuk. Now, the Gemara goes back. Well, the Rabbanan now, because the Rabbanan also, up until this point, we just explained what Reb Shimon do with the Rabbanan's pasuk. Rabbanan also, said, what do they do with Reb Shimon's pasuk? Mikol ashiyas megef and ayayin. Reb Shimon had said this is Mikol, which sounds like that you're only becoming a Nazir if you say everything because it says Mikol. But the Rabbanan says even one. What do they do with that pasuk? Some of the Rabbanan would tell you no. Hasam limit al isur Nazir. That's coming to teach you regarding the prohibitions of a Nazir. Shimon start from zemzeh that they combine one with the other for the share of a kazayas. So if let's say you only ate in the sum total of the grape seeds and the grape skins only for a zayas, you'd be chayiv malchus. That's what mikol means. Mikol means from all of them together, not that you have to take the neder from mikol, but that from all of them together, you'll be liable. But Reb Shimon, what does he do with that? How does he know it's halacha that the neder has to be from it all? Maybe it's just coming to say that they combine. So the Gemara, no, it cannot mean that they're going to combine. Because less late tziruf. He doesn't hold that you need an extra word in the pasuk of Mikol to tell you that they combine, because even by other Yisurim like Chaylev and Dam, he holds that you're liable for even a minute amount. So there's no halacha of tziruf. The time like in the Brisa, Shimon, he says Kol shulamakas, and minute amount of it, any Isser you'd be liable for lashes, because v'lo'emer kazayis elin carbon. The whole halacha of a zayis to be liable is only for a carbon, and says Taisus that here it doesn't apply a combining for a carbon, because the carbon of a Nazir doesn't come because he drank wine, only lashes. The carbon comes when he completes his neder and naziris. So therefore, you couldn't be able to learn them at Kol means tziruf, and that's where it concludes this discussion, what each one does with the other one's pasuk, and how they have their machlekes. Now look at the next Mishnah. Again, continuing with other types of Kabbalahs, again, like we said, different types of, not your generic Kabbalahs and Naziris. Let's say a guy says, Hareini k'Shimshon, I'm going to be like Shimshon. Or Keben Menayach, the son of Menayach, and these are all identifying features of the famous Shimshon Hagibar. His name was Shimshon, he was the son of Menayach. Or Kabal Delilah, the husband of Delilah. Now, as Taisa points out, it skips the Taisus, that if you just said Shimshon, or you just said Keben Menayach, that wouldn't be enough. You have to say these three appellations, these three Shimshon, Ben Menayach, and Baal Delilah is obvious from the Gemara. Now, but however, from this point on, Rabbeinu Tam is Geiris with a Vav. Ukamisha Akar Dalsas Aza. Ukamisha Nakar Plishta Mesenav. Because from this point on, it's not and, it's or. In other words, or he says, like the one who, like Kamisha Akar Dalsas Aza, the one who tore out the doors of Aza. Or Kamisha Nakar Plishta Mesenav, like the one that they poked out his eyes. Why? Because if you just say like the husband of Delilah, or you say that Meaning, if you just say one of these terminologies, you would be a Nazir Shimshon because no one's mistaking who we're talking about. That's the famous Samson, the famous Shimshon Giber. But if you just say Shimshon, as the Gemara is going to explain in a moment, which Shimshon? I have a guy Shimshon Nahari. Which Shimshon are we talking about? So you say those, that needs both. But here it's with a vav that it's either one. So then Hariz and Nazir Shimshon, you're going to be what's called a Nazir Shimshon, which we'll explain later on in this Masechta, what exactly are the halachas of a Nazir Shimshon. But that would make him into a Nazir Shimshon. Now, says the Gemara, Lamali lemisne kal halim. Why do you have to say all these descriptions to be a Nazir Shimshon? Says the Gemara, you need it, because the Iyam Harini Shimshon, I'm going to be like Shimshon. I would have said Shimshon Achrina, some other Shimshon. The son of Menach. If you would say the son of Menach, I would say, yeah, there might be another Shimshon in his father's Menach. Or, Taisa says, the way according to the Gifts of Taisa, or like the one that the Philistines poked out of his eyes. That's already a very indicating feature, and that would not need other appellations with it. Now, continuing on this theme of the previous Mishnah, we just mentioned a Nazir Shimshon. So the Mishnah asks, Ma bein Nazir Olam and Nazir Shimshon. What's the difference between someone who's an eternal Nazir or a Nazir of Shimshon? Which Taisa is bothered. He says, what do you mean? A very simple difference is what's called she'ela, to be shoyal, to be matir the neda of the Naziras. A Nazir Shimshon cannot have any she'ela. A Nazir Olam, you could be shoyal, as the Gemara says in the last paragraph of Masechtas Makos, in the halach of Chayrish Tel Mechad. So says Taisa's interesting answer. He says something that does not apply to Naziris, you're not going to say. Meaning, if you're being shoyal on your Naziris, then there's no Naziris. What the Mishnah means to ask, Ma bein Nazir Shimshon, is when we have Naziris, vas dechilik. To tell me, she'ela, dos is nicht in Naziris. So, that's a Taisa answer. But that's the Mishnah's question. What's the difference between them? Says the Mishnah, I'll tell you the differences. Nazir Olam, if someone says, I'm a Nazir my whole life, hich b'tzaycha, if his hair gets too heavy, so mekel b'tar. So he could lighten the hair load with a razor, meaning he can't totally shave it off, as we find by Avshalom that didn't totally shave it off because he actually ended up hanging and he died by being suspended from his hair, as the Gemara says in Saita. But he could lighten the load. Moreover, maybe Shalosh Behemoths. When he lightens the load of the hair, there's a Halacha Meish Sinai, where we have in the Smachta from Avshalom that he says Ashalom Nadarai, which he brings a chatas, oil and shlamim, just like a Nazir Tahar that finishes Naziris. When this Nazir Olam just lightens the hair, he also brings 3 animals. And then if he becomes Tameh, maybe Karban Tumah. He's got to bring a Karban of Tumah of 2 turtle doves and a Karban Asher. In contrast, a Nazir Shimshon has a different halacha. Hichbit Sair, if his hair gets too heavy, Ein Mekel, he cannot lighten the load. Shimshon had to keep his hair on no matter what. Then Nitma becomes Tameh, and maybe Karban Tumah, because actually Nazir Shimshon is not liable for Tumah. So that's the difference between Nazir Shimshon and Nazir Olam. So the Gemara asks and says, wait a second. Nazir Olam Mandakar Shmei, who mentioned anything in our Mishnayos about Nazir Olam that you're asking what's the difference from it and Nazir Shimshon? So the Gemara says, the word's missing, and this is what it's supposed to say. Someone says, I'm a Nazir forever. Okay, Haris a Nazir, and the Bach adds on the words, Olam. So he's a Nazir forever. And that is what the Mishnah is asking, Ma be Nazir Olam, Nazir Shimshon, they both seem to be forever. And that's what the Mishnah describes. Nazir Olam, an eternal Nazir, Hichbit Saibas, here gets too heavy, Mekel Batar, he could lighten it with a razor, maybe Shalosh Behemoths, he brings 3 animals. Then it may become Tumah, maybe Karban Tumah, brings a Karban of Tumah. And the contrast, Nazir Shimshon, if he takes Nazir of Shimshon, Hichbit Saibas, here gets too heavy, Ein Mekel Batar, he cannot lighten it with a razor, as a Getin Tumah Beis. And moreover, Ein maybe Karban Tumah, he does not bring a Karban of Tumah if he became Tumah. Now the Gemara makes a diuk, the Gemara makes an inference on the words of the Mishnah. It sounds like, okay, wait a second. Karban Hudulay Maisi. If a Nazir Shimshon becomes Tameh, you're telling me he won't bring a Karban. But it sounds like, of a Nazir is Chayil Aleha, but in other words, the Nazirs would take effect, in other words, that it would be forbidden for him to become Tameh, to Mason Likatchila, that's what it sounds like. You're just saying it doesn't bring a Karban. It sounds like, but it would be prohibited. Says Gemara, then Mani Mastin, who's the Tanna Mishnah. It's not like any one of the Tanaim that talk about this halacha. He says, Nazir Shimshon, mutal Tanna Mason. Although generally Nazir is not allowed to become Tameh Mason, if you take a Nazir Shimshon, you're allowed to. Shekim Etzina, but Shimshon Nitma, we find Shimshon Agiba made himself Tameh. So obviously you're allowed to. Shimon, he says an interesting idea. He says, Nazir Shimshon, if someone even takes upon himself a Nazir Shimshon, lo ima klum. You can't be a Nazir Shimshon. You haven't said anything. Why? We never find that there was an acceptance of naziris coming out of the mouth of anyone to make someone to make shimshon into a nazir. So in other words, it says Taisus, Reb Shimon holds that you would not have taken the neder of naziris. It's only that if you come from the womb by default as a nazir, that's what Shimshon was born a nazir. That was what the Malach made them take such a vow. And we need, if you're becoming any neder, you have to take it b'dava hanadr. So, like he says, Hareni kizesh another benazir. And like we learned that in the Gemara in the Dam, ki other neder, until you take a neder b'dava hanadr. Now, you can't take a neder of Nazir Shimshon, because that's not a dava hanadr. No one ever took a neder of Shimshon. So, it wouldn't be an appropriate hatfasa. Hatfasa has to be b'dava hanadr. It's not b'dava hanadr. No one took a neder of Nazir of Shimshon. So therefore, Reb Shimon says, B'chlal, you can't be a Nazir Shimshon. So it says the Gemara Mani, so who's the Tanna Mishnah? He says, even like a tchili, you could go ahead and be Matam Lamesa, not only that you're not going to bring a carbon. And but our Mishnah said, imminent may become tummy, sounds like only be the Yavin. And Reb Shimon, if it's Reb Shimon, says, you can't become a Nazir Shimshon. So who is the Tanna Mishnah that says that you could be a Nazir Shimshon, but you cannot be Matam Lamesa like a tchila? Says the Gemara Rabbi Yehuda. The truth is, the Tanna Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, who says that you're allowed to be Matam Lamesa even like a tchila. So why saying im nitma? No, but I think Tani Gabin Nazir Olam, since we're regarding the other case that we're contrasting with, the eternal Nazir. The halacha is im nitma if it becomes tummy, that he has to bring a carbon. So when we spoke about Nazir Shimshon, we said im nitma, that he doesn't have to bring a carbon. But the truth is, not only is it not im nitma that he doesn't have to bring a carbon, he's actually allowed to be even metame himself liketchila. Okay, fine. But then says the Gemara wants to make an interesting parallel in this machlokes Yehuda and Shimon. Lema, let's say this machlokes Yehuda and Shimon regarding if you could accept upon yourself the Nazir Shimshon at all. Let's say let's say it's along the lines of another machlokes Tanaim. What machlokes Tanaim do you want to compare this machlokes Yehuda and Shimon if you could accept upon yourself Nazir Shimshon or not? It's not. It's actually a brisa. Learn the brisa that says Harei alai kebachar. Someone says, I'm accepting upon myself that this loaf of bread should be like a bachar. This week's parasha, the end of the parasha this week, talks about the bachar, the firstborn animal. I want that this loaf of bread should be like a bachar, which that's what's called hatfasa. That's how generally a neder is. Like a carbon. It's saying, I want this to be like a bachar. What's the halacha? So you have machlekes. Rabbi Yaakov Oyser. Rabbi Yaakov actually says, okay, the loaf of bread is going to be forbidden. Rabbi Yisi says, no, it's going to be permitted. Says the Gemara, my love, isn't it that everyone agrees, if you would say that I want the loaf of bread to be like an oil or shlamim, so that would be davar nader. So of course there would be a valid isser of the loaf of bread. But a b'chayr is kaddish mirechem imoy. A firstborn is automatically sanctified, not through any neder that you're taking. So what's the machlekes? Yehuda Sabla Rabbi Yehuda, who we quoted before, who says that you could become a Nazir Shimshon. He holds like Rabbi Yaakov, that he says, Lo be'ina dava hanidar. You don't need it to be a dava hanidar, because like you see, if you say I want the loaf of bread to be like a bachar, which is not a dava hanidar, because that's automatically sanctified. So if you say I want to be like Shimshon, you can be a Nazir. Because although Nazir Daf Shimshon was not dava hanidar, it was kaddish mibeten, imoy like a bachar. Yeah, but you see Rabbi Yaakov holds that a bachar is a valid hatfasa. Rabbi Shimon sounds like Rabbi Yisi. Rabbi Shimon holds like Rabbi Yisi. The moment that he says being in dava hanidar, you need something to be vowed, and therefore saying like bachar is not going to be valid, and so to Nazir Shimshon is not going to be valid, because they're both actually the same thing. Shimshon and the bachar is really the same thing. It's both kaddish mibeten imoy. It's not through a neder. So that seems to be a very good application of that this should be the same thing that they're disagreeing about. So that says the Gemara Loi, not necessarily the case. Because the Kulam, you could say that everyone, meaning in this brisa that you're bringing of Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Yisi, maybe actually everyone agrees that be'in and dava hanadar, that it has to be something that was you're being matfis, that was a davar that was through a neder. In general, regarding the ziris. So then what's the machlekes? How could you say that regarding bachar that it's going to be a valid hatfasa? Bachar is different, because the Chsiv Beit says over there in the pasuk ki yidar neder lashem. What does that come to teach you? l'rabes es bachar. In other words, as Taisa explains, that even something that's automatically Lashem, even so, it's going to be considered as a davar hanadar. That's what Rabbi Yaakov would hold. So you can't tell me that, Rabbi Yehuda is coming from Rabbi Yaakov. No, not necessarily. You don't see from Rabbi Yaakov that you don't need a davar hanidar. It's just because you have a special ribui. Rabbi Yisi, Amalachi would tell you, no, Ahul Hashem is teaching you something else. Not teaching you that even something that's automatic Hashem. It's Mebayli l'Rabbas Chatzis b'Asham. You needed to include a Chatzis and Asham. Why do you need to say if this loaf of bread is like a Chatzis b'Asham to include it? Because as Taisa explained, you would have thought to say without the word Lashem, Oyla and Shlamim, that are brought as in the Dava, they're a Dava Hanadar. But Chatzis and Asham, they're obligations. That's not called a Dava Hanadar. From Lashem, that we include anything that's similar to Lashem, which is other types of kabbalas, even Chatzis and Asham. But then the Gemara says, wait a second, why do you see fit to include from the word Lashem that if I'm going to say that this loaf of bread should be like a Chatzis Asham, which is something that's not really Davan Nadi, really obligated in, and Lahitz is B'char. So why excluding B'char, which is also similar to automatic, like Chatzis and Asham? Why excluding that? Says the Gemara, no. Marba ni Chatzis Asham, I'm going to include Chatzis and Asham, Shekim Atfisan Beneder, because even though it's an obligation to bring, but you still have to be makdish which animals you're going to make into your chatzis and asham. So it's still applicable to make like your vow of what you're going to bring. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to exclude that of the b'char, shem matfisa b'neder, where that has nothing to do with any neder that you're saying. It's automatic. In chatzis asham, it's not automatic. So that's why I'm going to include chatzis and asham and exclude that of b'char. That's what Rabbi Yisi held. But Rabbi Yaakov Amalach will tell you, no, it's not true. B'char nami matfisa b'nedhu. B'char is also something that you transfer the sanctity onto the firstborn animal through your words. What does that mean? I thought it's sanctified the moment it comes out of the first animal out of the mother's womb. No, the time like learned the brisa. Shalbeis Rabbeinu Amru, from the house of our teacher it was said, meaning from that of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Minayin l'noi l'noi b'char b'toich edrom. Where do we know that someone that has a firstborn animal that's born in his flock? Shem mitzvah love lahakdisha. It's a mitzvah to sanctify it. In other words, that this b'char, you should say that it's sanctified, even though it's automatically sanctified from the womb. So then it says the pasuk in Devarim. The pasuk says over there that any firstborn that's born in your cattle and in your flock, it says hazachar takdish. The male you should sanctify. What do you mean you should sanctify? It's automatically sanctified. No, to teach you that you have to actually go in and sanctify it. So it is also on some level a davar hanider, just like Chatzis Asham, therefore Rabbi Yaakov includes it. Rabbi Yisrael Malachi would tell you, no. I hear your svara. Nehid the mitzvah like teacher, though you're right. It is a mitzvah to sanctify it. But Elam Akdash, if you didn't sanctify it, Mila Kaddish, wouldn't it be holy? So therefore it's not considered davar neder because it's only a mitzvah be'alma to do it. But it's not really be'etzem a neder. Chatzis Asham, you have to actually go ahead and designate and make a neder. This is going to be the Chatzis and Asham. And again, therefore this is the machlokes. So we don't really have a source to show Rabbi Yehuda's opinion how you could become a Nazir Shimshon. Because Ma'aser Shimshon was not a davar haneder. We thought we're going to show it that he's going like the opinion of Rabbi Yaakov. The Gemara rejected that and says not necessarily Rabbi Yaakov could hold it needs a davar neither. Just b'char is a separate halacha that you find explicitly. The Torah tells you from the word Lashem that it is going to be considered on some level like a davar haneder. But then the Gemara asks, according to Reb Shimon, we're going back to the machlokes reading Reb Shimon. Shimon said that you're not going to be a Nazir when you say like Nazir Shimshon. But ask the Gemara, Gabi Nazir Nami Haksiv Lashem. What's the Gemara's question? So like Taisa explains. It says, just like Rabbi Yaakov had said, that you're right, not like Rabbi Yehuda. It has to be davar neder. So you cannot become, let's say, a Nazir Shimshon. Just like, because only b'char that you learn that from the word Lashem. So wait a second, ask the Gemara. Nazir Shimshon you should also be able to be, because it says the word Lashem by Nazir. You should also include something that's automatically for Hashem, like Nazir Shimshon. Good question. It says the Gemara, that's needed to teach you something else, not to teach you this halacha. The Gitanya, like in the Brisa, and this is a very interesting story which we had already in Mesechtes Nedarim. Amar Shimon Tzadik. Shimon Tzadik says, Miyamai lo yechalti Hashem Nazir Tameh. In my day, I never ate the guilt offering of a Nazir that became Tameh. Now, Taisa explains, other guilt offerings he would eat, but the asham of a Nazir was very difficult in his eyes to eat. Why? Because it only comes when the Nazir becomes tamei. Now, since he became tamei, he's afraid maybe this guy, he regretted the neder of the Naziris. You know why? This guy has to start all over again. And he's like, he's not in, his heart's not there. So on some level, it's like chul and lazar, because this guy doesn't really want to do this. So he never used to eat from the ashman nazir tamei, chutz me'adam echad, except for one person, sheba alai min hadachim. They came to me from the south. Yafei nine, beautiful eyes, v'toiveri, a beautiful appearance, v'ktzotzeisav sedurus leitaltalim, and his locks, his hair was like organized in locks and curly hair. I said to him, B'ni, my son, what did you see fit to destroy this beautiful hair? Because when the Nazir, although he grows along, he's going to have to cut it off. Amali said to me, I'll tell you why. I was a shepherd for my father in my city. And I went to draw water from the spring. And I saw my image reflected in the water. And my inclination jumped on me. And he wanted to chase me away from the world because it's like, hey, you're a good-looking guy, you should get all the girls and whatever. I told him, Reika, empty one. And there's a lot of nuances over here to understand the fight, the struggle that we have with our inner lust. Empty one. And who's he talking to, right? He's talking to himself. Why are you being arrogant in the world that's not yours? Meaning, on a simple understanding, you're looking how beautiful you are. You're going to be worms and maggots. What are we investing in you? Right? The soul is forever. The body is going to deteriorate. And the body is going to take over and want to do things that are not good for the soul. I swear by the service that I'm going to shave you off for the sake of heaven. So, says Reb Shimon, Shimon HaTzadik, I got up and I kissed him on his head. I said to him, like you should be an increase of Nazirim in the Jewish people. Allah, because of you, the passage says, a man when he's going to enunciate to make a neder of Naziris, lahazal Hashem, to make a Naziris for Hashem. Oh, that was the Gemara's question. What does the word Hashem mean? In other words, that the beginning of his vow was totally Shem Shemayim. And therefore Shimon HaTzadik wasn't afraid that he's going to regret, even though this guy became Tamei. That's why he's bringing the Asham of Nazir Tamei. But others who take Nedarim, generally a guy who takes a Nediz and it's a Sarah, or he has some type of Aver that he did, to like be paining himself and to atone for his sin. But when the days add up, suddenly he regrets all his Kabbalahs that he made, he's going to be like Toyal Yerushalayim, he's going to regret. So you want to know what does the word Hashem come to teach you? It comes to teach you that the guy should be taking his neder for the sake of heaven, not to teach you like you want to tell me to include Nazir Shimshon. But now the Gemara asks another question on Reb Shimon. The Shimshon lav Nazir hava? What is the Gemara's question? In other words, is that really so that he didn't take a Kabbalah, a neder of Naziris? But the pasuk says, Ki nezer elikim yiyah, like the Gemara quotes. So the Gemara assumes that the Malach told the father that he should make him a nazir when he's born. As the Gemara says later on, the Chav Chesem Beis, that a father could make a neder that his son will be a nazir. So the Gemara asks for it says the pasuk in Sefer Shoftim, Ki nezer elikim yiyah nar min habatin, because a nazir of God will this child be from the womb. So you see that there was a Kabbalah of Naziris. So the Gemara, no, Hasam Malach hu dekama, there the Malach said, with a prophecy, but never was a Naziris accepted from the mouth of the father or from Shimshon himself. Therefore, Reb Shimon held that you can't take a Naziris of Shimshon because it's not a Davar Nader. Because that was from God. Just like Chazir is forbidden because of God. It's a prophecy he's going to be, but no one ever took a Kabbalah. So it doesn't help. You can't be noider in the Davar HaAsr, has to be the Davar HaNader. Now the Gemara goes to ask on Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda had said, no, you could take a Kabbalah of Nazir Shimshon, but you're allowed to be Metam Mesim, like we find by Shimshon that was Metam. So the Gemara said, Umenolan di Tam Mesim. Where do we find this idea that Shimshon was Metam Mesim? So it says the Gemara, if you think it's from a pasuk in Sefer Shoftim that says, Bilchi HaChamar, with the jaw of a donkey, says Shimshon, Hikisi Elef Ish, I killed 1,000 men. And you see that he was obviously with the dead. Says, how do you know? which are terminology of like an arrow. Maybe he threw it at them and he killed them. He had a good shot. Boom, boom, boom. How do you know? Maybe he never touched them. Similarly, right, from a different pasuk over there, it says, "V'yach mehem shleishim ish," that he killed from them, he hid from them 30 men. V'yikach es chalitzasim, and he stripped them of their clothing. So obviously, he was matam l'mesim. Says, how do you know? Dilma ashlechinu b'reisha b'adikatlina. Maybe he first stripped them and then he killed them. Says, no, but yach v'yikach. Except look at the order. It says he hit and then he took. Says, okay, but dilma goisin shabinan. Maybe he made them into like they were in the throes of death. They were like comatose. These guys are like blood dripping out. Which Tais says love dafka geises because actually a Nazir is actually forbidden to touch a geises. It just means close to geises. These guys were like half paralyzed and then he stripped them. So the Gemara says, you're right. El Gemara Gemirla. You're right. It's just a tradition that we have that he killed them and then he stripped them. And says Tais, even according to the one who holds in Yavamas of Samach Alf Amad Alf that the graves of non-Jews is not matama ba'oil, it is matama b'maga by touch, and therefore we see that Shimshon HaGiber was matama l'meisim, and therefore that's how we know that if someone accepts upon himself in the Nizir Shimshon Yehuda, that although it is a Kabbalah, but he's going to be able to matama l'meisim. Thank you to any time for hosting us.